All right, let's start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to our session today. I know it's the last session of the day. It's a long day, so we always appreciate you guys coming to the last sessions. Hopefully, we'll make it more interesting and make it worthwhile. We know we will. My name is Advait Joshi, AJ, as I'm called in Microsoft. This is David. Both of us have been working on Microsoft client technologies and Microsoft client protection and management technologies. So we've got a lot of experience in client management and security industry. What we wanted to do today in this session was talk about consumerization of IT. Everybody is talking about it, everybody knows it, everybody lives it. What we wanted to do is provide you context of where we are going with Microsoft technologies in general. And since we talk to multiple customers, we talk to analysts, we talk to industry experts, we thought that we should share what we hear from them. We should share the trends that are happening today in the industry so that you will get help in embracing the new trends and embracing the new technologies to enhance your infrastructure. How many of you saw Brad's keynote today? Most of you. Awesome. So, those of you who didn't, I would highly encourage you to go watch it. Simply because that was a great foundation for our discussion today. What Brad talked about and discussed was, it was kind of a future-looking session, the enhancements that are coming out with Windows Server 2012, with Windows Intune, with Configuration Manager 2012 in the near future. What we wanted to do was help you set the stage. So we are going to talk today about what is available to you today in market and what you can do today to embrace consumerization. Once you do that, once you understand the Microsoft end-to-end technologies that are available to you today and set those up, you will have a head start to get all the new technologies in the near future that Brad was talking about, whether it be Windows 8, whether it be Windows Server 2012, or whether it be Windows Intune. So our focus today is to understand and discuss what is available to you today, end-to-end Microsoft technologies that will help you embrace consumerization, that will help you enable the flexibility to your users so that they can use any device, they can use any device of their choice and applications to be productive from anywhere they want. So that's our objective today. And I hope that you have seen this slide, or you have, I know that this is not new to you. Everybody that I talked to today is experiencing and living this consumerization, which is people having multiple devices. Like Brad talked about today, that a recent IDC study showed us that there are around about 5 to 7 devices per person, per average person today. And so you guys are living this. I don't need to give you more details on the new digital generation that is coming in and having more control over the devices that they want to use and productivity choices that they want to make. All of that is termed as consumerization. Now, 1 year ago, consumerization was just a marketing term. Like nobody knew what consumerization really was. Call it what you will, but today all of us face this. People are having iPads, people are having Android devices, and of course, you have Windows tablets or Windows desktops and laptops in your organization. How do you manage information flow and maintain productivity in your environment while supporting all these devices? Let's look at some challenges that we have seen in the industry today. One is the manageability of multiple devices. As I said, 5 to 7 devices per average person. How do you know what device is being used by an average user? How do you know what applications that user is accessing? And how do you manage it, right? And there are different ways and different thoughts in the industry today on how do you manage different set of devices. And I think that thought process is still evolving. finally how to manage. Nobody has agreed upon strategy on how do you manage those different devices. And the next thing is, you have those devices, you've figured out some management of those devices. Now, the users want to access applications, access information, data that is crucial for your organization. They are accessing data on their own devices. They control those devices, right? And so how, from an IT perspective, how do you provide access to those apps so those users are productive, but also make sure that your corporate data and information is safe? Those are the challenges that we see today. And so from those challenges, the considerations that we think are very, very important are, one, when you are thinking of management of these diverse devices, there is this tension between, I want to manage the entire devices, or on the other end of spectrum, I don't want to manage the devices themselves, but I do want to manage the user experience. And you need to have a paradigm shift and understand how the user works to provide that appropriate experience. And the second one is about corporate-owned versus consumer-owned. And I think we need to, as Brad also mentioned today in his keynote, that we need to think about it from corporate control versus consumer control, because it really doesn't matter anymore who owns that device. You still need to provide applications and information that is crucial for those users to be productive. And so those are the things that you need to think about when you are designing and architecting your infrastructure to embrace consumerization. And what is important behind the scenes there is you are building an application infrastructure. An application infrastructure that will allow users to access applications, and not only allow users to access applications, but make them secure. So security and access go hand in hand with your application infrastructure. So those are the important things that we are thinking about when we are designing solutions for you guys. So in a traditional environment, in the olden ways of managing your devices, it used to be very device-centric. You would know different devices that are being used in your environment, whether they are laptops, whether they are desktops, and they could be phones as well. But you knew them, and you had policies for those devices. And then the user would go and access those devices or access applications on those devices. With consumerization and with the dynamic way of users accessing different devices and different applications, this old way becomes extremely difficult to manage these devices. Simply put, the inventory of devices per person, as I said, 5 to 7 devices, it becomes extremely difficult for the IT admin to understand those devices, understand what those devices are capable, and then define policy. Now, instead of that, we think that we need to think about management through a user-centric view. Meaning, you want to know what the user needs, you want to know what is the optimum user experience, and let technology help provide that experience. So you provide policies to a user, and based on whatever device that user is using, the technology behind the scenes will provide that optimum experience. So whether it is a phone, you get phone optimized application, or whether it is a virtual machine, you get a VDI optimized application experience. So all of that should be handled dynamically, handled intelligently. That's where we are going. But once you have that, once you take that step of going to user-defined or policies or user-centric policies, the question is, how do you define those policies? How do you provide access to the devices and the users? And as I said, we need to now support consumer-controlled devices, right? Not just corporate-owned devices. So when you are thinking of providing those policies, when you are thinking of defining policies for these users, you need to go away from ownership and control to control and governance. control, governance, and compliance becomes extremely important. A good example of that is your phone. Most of you, if not all of you, can access emails on your phone. That phone may be owned by you or owned by your organization, but based on some compliance, that organization has enabled giving or having email access to you on that phone. So our point here is that you need to think about compliance, whether that device is compliant or not. And based on that compliance, you provide access policies. As we go along in today's presentation, through individual components of our strategy, at the end, we'll round it up and actually go into a deeper level of access policies that you can have based on compliance, based on access needs, and based on the devices that a user is using. So at the end of the session, you will see our granular policies that you may want to deploy in your organization. So let's talk about different experiences that you can provide your user while you are defining consumerization policies, when you are defining user-centric policies. The first one that you can define for an application infrastructure is device-optimized apps, meaning applications that are specifically built to provide the best experience on that device. So you have applications on your phone that are specifically built for that device. That's one of the examples here that you may want to think about. Of course, it has positives and negatives. Positive is that you get the best experience for that device, optimal experience for that device. The negative is that if you are maintaining that application, it becomes difficult. Now you have multiple applications to maintain per mobile environment or mobile platform. The second one, easiest to maintain, it's web apps, right? You have people can go on the web, access the apps from anywhere as well as from any device, as long as that device supports that web platform. That's easier to maintain, but the clients will need connection, always on connection to the internet, and as well as it may not be it may not be optimized, always optimized for that device. So that's the second strategy. And the third strategy, which I think is very popular these days, I've had a lot of people come to me, even at this MMS, talking about virtualization. And so the next strategy that you can have to provide applications, to provide access to your users is desktop virtualization or VDI technology, right? So you have virtual desktops and apps that you can provide so users can log in and access your corporate data without risking the compliance of that data, without risking the integrity of that information and data going outside of your organization. So you have this virtual desktop infrastructure, and you have applications set up on that virtual infrastructure that you can provide to your users. And obviously, on the user side, the user can access, use any of those devices, and with all these three different components of this strategy, you'll be able to maintain an optimized application infrastructure. Let's talk about from application infrastructure. As I said earlier, application infrastructure and security go hand in hand today, because we want to make sure that while you're providing access to applications and information, critical information, security and access is taken care of, because that's primarily very important to make sure that compliance is maintained for your corporate data. This is the traditional view of how you would secure your organization or network, right? You would have a firewall, you would have a perimeter gateway, a VPN gateway, then you would have a VPN client accessing those resources inside. The way we think about it now is you would have to have some modern gateway, and it could be a clientless VPN access or clientless always-on access, like direct access from Microsoft, or it could be SSL VPN gateway, but you need to think about some modern way of providing perimeter security as well as remote access to your users. And with that modern gateway, then you want to think about securing the devices. So you have multiple devices. They could be consumer controlled or they could be corporate controlled. But you still want to make sure that they are secure, they are compliant. They are, you have some governance around those usage of those devices. And with that, you can provide secure access to those devices and to those users. So that was a high level of what we see in the industry today. What can Microsoft do, and how can Microsoft help you get ready for that consumerization trend? And remember, we are talking about what is available to you today. So you can go back and actually start thinking and architecting things that we are talking about today. You can do that as soon as you go back. So let's talk about Microsoft solutions and how they can help. The first one was about providing management of diverse devices. So we have several technologies that combine to provide you with that level of management. And the second one, obviously, is about applications and data. I don't know if you have seen this. How many of you have seen flexible work style solutions from Microsoft? Anyone? Okay, few of you. Now all of you have seen this. So what Microsoft is doing is we have, as part of Windows 7, we have multiple solutions. One of them, as flexible work style solutions, we have multiple scenarios that we cover. And I just wanted to make you aware that if you talk to any Microsoft account manager that you work with, or people like me here at MMS, you'll be able to understand the solutions that we are offering, flexible work style solution for Windows. And today, what I'm talking about is the intelligent infrastructure, how we enable intelligent infrastructure that will help you embrace consumerization. So with that, let's talk about optimized application infrastructure that you can enable with Microsoft solutions. So we talked about device-optimized applications, right? Applications that are specifically built for specific devices. Now, Brad actually showed you in today's keynote different variety of applications being delivered on Windows 8 and other platforms. Let's talk about device-optimized applications that you have today with Microsoft Office. You have Office components that work on Windows Phone, and those are really optimized to use the device components. So specifically on Windows Phone, it can use that smaller screen, it can use the memory effectively, so that you have the best experience of these applications. So literally, I mean, I've had situations where I'm driving and I'm actually looking at, I don't drive, but I'm sitting in the car and looking at PowerPoint deck on my phone and editing it. So it's really powerful way of providing optimized apps to your users, making them more productive. That's one, giving you rich experiences on those devices. The second one is web apps. Again, best example of web apps from Microsoft is Office 365. You can actually have all the Office components hosted online. You can access them from anywhere, and you can have combination of on-premise Office and Office 365 work for you. Exchange online, for example. No need to have your own infrastructure for Exchange. It can be online, and people can access your email from anywhere, right? So those are the web apps that I was talking about that you can get from Microsoft and enable your users to use them online from virtually any device. What I'm going to do is let David actually show you a couple of those things and drill more details into what we offer. David?
All right, thanks. So there is, to make this real, what I'm going to show you is communication, collaboration, and productivity with 3 different users using web apps, Link, and the rich clients that are there on Windows. So when we look at devices here, I got to show you the devices so you at least see what it looks like. So we will swap here. Give me 1 second. So this is the camera. So up here, the first device you're going to see, this is Cynthia. Cynthia is actually logged into a Motorola Zoom Android tablet, and you'll see the actual real screen here in a second. We're going to then go to a Windows machine, but then also we have an iPad 2 that we're going to use. And then finally, we'll have a iPhone and a Windows phone to show you. So to start off, let me connect up to the Android device so you get a little better view of that. Okay, so here is the Android device. All right, now what we've done, Cynthia has, and the company has purchased Office 365, and Cynthia has an account here, and what she's done is she's logged in with her browser. So we're going to go open up the browser. And what you'll notice here, this is the home page of Office 365. So when you're on Office 365, you'll notice that you can install Link. So if when you buy Office 365, you actually get a copy of Link for Mac or Link for Office for Windows, as well as the full version of Office on the rich client. But this is our home. What we're going to do is we're going to go into the team site, so the SharePoint site online. We're going to click on that. And this is just, Christian Snowboarders is just a site that I own. I just set this up just for custom to make it fun. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually click on Sales Analysis document here. So when we click on that, this is actually pulling up Excel, and it's rendering that Excel document on the server itself. So this Android device has no Office at all installed on it. And what you get is the rich fidelity of Office here right inside your web browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Edit in Browser. Give it a second here. Go back. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. There we go. So what we'll notice down here is we have one person editing. So now as I start moving to multiple machines, what you'll notice is that you'll actually see additional people editing here. But what I can do is you'll notice that you do have options. You do have the ribbon in the web browser, but you don't have the full fidelity suite of options to edit the document. But you do have a lot of choices. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave this up, and then I'm going to actually switch to another device. So as you notice here, we're Cynthia Carey on this device, and we have one person editing this document. So I'm going to now switch to a rich scenario of a Windows machine on a different user who's actually going to be editing this same document. Okay, so we have Alice here, and Alice is on her Windows machine. And what we can see here is that Alice has connectivity to Office 365. We're going to sign in. And when we go to this team site, what you'll notice is there's those same documents there. So when we click on Sales Analysis, we get that same document. Now, once I click Edit in Web Browser, what we'll notice now is we have two people editing the same document. So if I were to go over and make changes on the Android device, or if I make changes here, it's actually going to be reflected on all of these sessions. And you'll notice when I make those changes, the graphs dynamically expand and change on the device itself. The other thing to point out is that we have the actual Office, the integrated Link client into this picture. So what we can do, and one of the unique advantages that we have with using Windows over other machines, is that we actually have an integrated experience for Link across many different areas. So for instance, when you're in SharePoint, you can actually see the status of the users that are here, right? So if Ben were online, it's literally as simple as what I need to do is just highlight their name, send an instant message, and from there, what I can do is either share a desktop out, I can start a video, an actual phone call, or share my video out, and I can do all of this with just Office 365 infrastructure. I actually don't need to deploy Lync on premise. So far we've shown Cynthia on the Android. We've shown you Alice on the actual Windows device. So now we're going to actually move to the iPad. All right. So I'll promise you right now that those icons up there are not mine. You'll notice there's Barbie apps and things like that. That is my 3-year-old daughter. She is the primary user of this iPad. I really don't use it much, honestly. It's lots of fun little games for her. But anyway, that's a little side note. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually go in and I'm going to first bring up this same document again. And so what you'll notice here is now we've got Ben on his iPad. And with this, of course, we can rotate this for different angles. And then, of course, we can also go, again, to edit in browser. And when we edit this in browser, you'll also see down at the bottom, and it's kind of small, but the very bottom right, you can see there's actually, and maybe this will work better when I switch it to the side. Yeah, you can actually see there's Alice, Ben, and Cynthia all actually editing the same document via web apps. All right. So now I'm going to actually switch a little bit to Lync on the iPad. And we actually have Lync on the iPad, on Android, on Windows Phone, of course, and iPhone. So we have Lync on a lot of different places. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Lync here. And I'm going to actually just go ahead and send a message over to Alice and say, nice stats. So I'm actually collaborating right on the web document online. So I'm just going to say nice stats, looks good. And I'm going to send that. Okay. So let's swap now to the actual Wolf Vision. So now Alice actually has the Lync on the iPhone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go over to the Wolf Vision camera. Okay, and here's the iPhone. All right, this is just an iPhone 4, and what we have is Lync. And what we notice there, right there, is we have the instant message from Ben says, nice stats, looks good. So right there, we can effectively communicate on Lync using the Lync client. And of course, the other nice thing, and we don't have time to demo this, but the other nice thing that I really personally like about Lync that I use all the time is with meetings, is the one click to join. So if you have a meeting that you need to join, you literally click a button on your phone, it joins you to that meeting, and then it'll actually call you back on your phone. And when the people in the meeting, they can actually see your name and not just some random phone number. It also allows you the ability to, when you're wanting to move out of the office or move to different phone numbers, you can seamlessly switch between different devices or phone numbers and still stay connected to the meeting. All right, so I can't end this unless I at least show you Windows Phone. So with Windows Phone, one of the nice things that we have with Windows Phone is that we actually have Office integrated in natively into the phone. So when we go to the Office Hub, which is built in with all Windows phones, one of the things that you'll notice is that we have, you see this Christian Snowboarders hub here, which connects up to my 365 site that you just saw. So what we'll see here is there's documents, site assets, all the things that are actually on SharePoint are available right there inside the deal. So what I can do is actually click on one of these documents. And what you'll notice is we get the actual PowerPoint presentation. And if we want, and this is where we are really different, is that we have a lot of richer functionality, right? This is this native application that's on the phone. So if I want to skip between slides, I've got something like this. I also can actually edit this. So if I wanted to edit this, I can actually pull it down and make changes to the slides itself on the phone. This is something that on other platforms you would actually have to pay for. You'd have to pay for some form of Office editing on iOS or Android, whereas you just get a native viewing experience. But here, we get a really full, rich experience with Office. And as you notice here, what I can do is say, I'm going to change this to advertising at MMS 2012. And when I click on that, there we go. It actually updated the PowerPoint slide, and that's going to actually make that change up on the SharePoint site. So I'm just going to say, no, I'm not going to save those changes. But of course, we can do the same thing, right, for Excel and all these other documents. So this is one of the, obviously, the really unique and advantages of Windows Phone. And of course, we've got Link, and we also have Skype on our phone as well. And so this is your experience. So what I've basically shown you is co-authoring across multiple devices using Office web apps and Office 365 on an Android, an iPad, and on Windows. I've also shown you Link and how you can use that to communicate and collaborate across all of these different devices.
Well, thanks. Thanks, David. So you just saw, as David said, device-optimized applications and web applications delivered to a user. So a user can use any of those devices and still be productive, still collaborate within his or her group. So that's a very powerful tool that you have available. The last option in the infrastructure, application infrastructure that we wanted to talk about was about virtual desktops and virtual apps. So you have these web apps and device-optimized apps. Great. But if you still wanted to have a more secure way of providing access and not have the information and data leave your corporate environment at all, then you have virtual desktops and virtual apps. That's a strategy you can provide. With Microsoft solution, with Hyper-V, you saw today with 2012, you have a lot of enhancements that are coming out with shared storage spaces and all the other things, goodies that you will get with Server 2012. What we have today is dynamic memory, for example, where you can share the memory space for different VMs and thereby have a more efficient way and more density of virtual machines that you can pack and provide either personal VMs to your users, or they can be pooled virtual desktop experiences for your users. But both ways, you can offer a virtual environment so a user can access the desktop. The corporate desktop experience can be accessed by a user from any device. And they can get a consistent experience of your corporate desktop image. They can get consistent experience of the applications that have been defined for them in the corporate environment without having to worry about maintaining anything locally, right? So you have that going on for your virtual desktops and apps. So Hyper-V, pooled VDI or personal VDI. The third option there is also remote desktop services and session virtualization. So through session virtualization, you can provide virtual sessions, and people can still access applications that way that are hosted in-house. With remote desktop services, you have remote FX. So you can provide rich experiences through RDS. And then finally, we come to application virtualization, right? With application virtualization, you have ability to provide a virtualized set of applications, meaning you don't have to deploy or install anything locally on those machines. You can define virtual apps, virtual instances. People can change their desktops based on their profile. Whichever device they use, they will get those icons. Once they click those icons, nothing is installed locally. Once they click those icons, AppV client will automatically stream that virtual application. So the experience for the users is seamless, but the benefit is that you are hosting everything in-house. And that same experience can be used for your VDI or virtual machines that you are hosting, so that you don't have to, when you create images, you don't have to install and create different applications on that image. Just install an AppV client, and that will take care of all other AppV instances that you have defined for your users. And the last piece in virtualization that you may want to think about is about enterprise desktop virtualization. So once in a while I meet customers who have not migrated to Windows 7 yet. And the reason is about application compatibility. They have applications that work on Windows 2000, XP, what have you, and they don't want to go to Windows 7 unless they make sure that those applications work. And so with this MEDV, or Enterprise Desktop Virtualization, that comes with MDOP offering, with MEDV, it actually gives you a virtual PC environment that runs Windows XP. So if you had any legacy applications, you can install Windows 7, you can have MEDV that will give you a Windows XP experience within Windows 7, and then run those applications. So app compatibility is taken care of with MEDV as well. So those are the things that you can think about while you are thinking of virtualizing your environment. One is VDI infrastructure, creating pooled or personal VDI offerings for your users, and then using AppV or application virtualization as well. I actually want David to show you few things on AppV and how it is delivered to different set of devices. So David.
All right, so what we're going to show you right now is that user end experience of delivering applications via AppV. So it's virtual application delivery. Now the first thing I want to point out is this is Ben's laptop, and he is actually connected via direct access. So when we look at this, we're just going to do an IP config. And what you'll notice is that his IP address is actually on this coffee shop. He's on this external connection, right? This could be wherever you're at. DA goes all over 443, and so you're really covered wherever you're at. And when we see this, what we can see is that when I connect up to my internal SharePoint site, so notice here, I'm going to hit refresh. And what you'll notice here in the URL is that it is an internal SharePoint URL, even though I'm actually out on the internet. But the great thing about direct access is as if you're on the corporate network anywhere where you're at. So what I'm going to do is I actually looked here on the SharePoint site, and it looks like I want to open this Contoso disclosure policy document. Well, it's a PDF, and so when I save this and try and open it, oh, I don't have Adobe actually installed. So what I'm going to do, because I know about this application catalog, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, as you notice here, this is the application self-service portal provided by Configuration Manager 2012. So what we have here is the Adobe Reader application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Install. Yes, I want to install it. And what this is doing is you notice it says evaluating requirements. AJ in a little bit is going to actually show you some of the back end of this on how it's set up and what's actually going on here. So you'll notice that the application has started. The bottom down here it says downloading and installing the software. And while it's installing here, it actually there's a lot of logic that's behind the scenes here. So it'll actually tell you, based on a number of criteria, whether you want to install an AppV application or whether you want to install a native application. You'll also notice here that under options, I have a lot of different things I can configure. Let's say I don't want the power settings from my IT department. I want a remote control this device or block settings from the admin. There's all kinds of other settings in here that you can actually configure. And it looks like we are done. So Adobe has actually been installed, and Adobe has been installed while I'm out on the internet over direct access, connected to Configuration Manager, which is inside my corporate network. So now, when I go back to to IE on my actual internal SharePoint site, and I open up that disclosure document, Adobe is actually launching, and it's actually installed with AppV. So you'll notice here I've got the AppV client. The application virtualization client is installed, and I've actually now got that available to my users.
Cool. So this was a combination of application virtualization. So you just saw that a user was trying to access a PDF file, didn't have Adobe Reader, and could go into a self-service portal that Configuration Manager 2012 now offers you, right? So you can set that portal. Users can go in and on demand get applications that they need. In this case, it was an AppV version of the Adobe Reader. So it didn't install anything locally. That application was, the AppV client was installed, and it was streamed from a distribution point. So that's the power of Configuration Manager 2012 and AppV integration. And I'm going to talk about that in my next strategy component, which is, yep, you have now defined a virtual environment. You have defined application infrastructure. It's dynamic enough. Now, how do you manage them? How do you make sure that you don't have separate management for separate virtual environment, your on-premise environment, as well as mobile device environment? That's where we think about unified management provided by System Center components, Windows Intune, and Microsoft in general, right? So we talk about application delivery and how Config Manager helps there. How do you get visibility into assets and inventory of your organization, and management of your desktops from the cloud. So let's talk about user-centric application delivery. What you just saw was a great example of that user-centricity that we have introduced in 2012. It's when I was talking about user-centric management, you think about user-centricity, and I said you need to think about user and understand the user, what the user needs to do, and let technology handle how to provide that experience, the best experience for that user for any device he's using, right? That technology is Configuration Manager. Configuration Manager will understand the relationship between a user and a device. Whether that device is a virtual environment, whether that device is a primary device of that user. All that relationship is understood by Configuration Manager. And based on that relationship, based on the rules that you have created, the appropriate application and experience will be delivered to the user by Configuration Manager. And the example from the user perspective you saw while David was downloading PDF for Adobe Reader. Right? It automatically sensed that he was logged in as a user that didn't have the primary device. And so because it was not a primary device, it actually published an AppV version of it. It didn't install anything locally. So Configuration Manager understands the context of user and what device the user is using, and will provide or distribute software based on that. That's the user centricity. Again, the other part is virtualization. As I said, you want to unify the management of virtual environment as well as your physical environment. And Configuration Manager will understand the virtual machines as well. So you don't end up creating different management system or different inventory system for virtual machines. Configuration Manager will understand it. We have some features in Configuration Manager, for example, randomizing updates, randomizing scans, so you don't cause scan storms or update storms when you have thousands of VMs and they start scanning all at the same time. We don't do that. It's baked in the product so that it's automatically, we understand it's a virtual machine, and we randomize those scans so that not all of them go together. So that's another management that we can unify and bring in-house. What I'm going to do now is actually show you behind the scenes of Configuration Manager and how we were able to deploy Adobe Reader when David was trying to access it. How many of you have, how many of you know about the new application model for Configuration Manager? Okay. Some of you do.
About half of you, maybe.
Yeah. So first of all, this is obviously the new 2012 Configuration Manager that is available to you now. And the user centricity is seen everywhere. That's the theme of the design for this product. So in applications, no longer you have to define packages, but you can define applications and then define multiple deployment types. In this case, what I'm showing you is the Adobe Reader that we have defined for different users. And down below, I have deployment types. So as you can see, different deployment types have been created. And those different deployment types speak to, what happens when a user is using a primary device, meaning a laptop that is provided by the organization. Like when I travel, I have my laptop with me. That's provided by Microsoft. That's my primary device. You can basically define different deployment types based on that relationship. So if I'm using my primary device, then this Adobe Reader 9 could be always installed locally as a MSI. But if I'm not using my primary device, if I'm using a VDI session perhaps, and I need Adobe, if I'm using a different device, a loaner laptop perhaps, right, then I don't want to install anything locally. And in that case, Configuration Manager will understand based on these rules and deploy an AppV version of it. So I can go in the details of different deployment types and customize them. For example, in this case, I'm saying persist the content in client cache. What that means is, since this is my primary device, even if I'm not connected to the internet, I'm not connected to the network, I should, Adobe Reader should be cached, so I can use that even if I'm offline, right? Whereas for other devices, I may not want to do that. I may not want to cache it in the on the machine so that they can use it even if they are not online. So those are the different things that you can do to define applications in Configuration Manager now. And ultimately, once you define these deployment types, you can deploy it not to devices, not to collection of machines, but now you can deploy it to users. And as I said, Configuration Manager will understand the user relationship with those devices. And lastly, what I want to show you is the relationship that we have built. So you can define different types of rules. You can define global conditions. So you can say, if this is a mobile device, then use this, or if this is let's say a virtual device, then you can define different global conditions to check before it can install that application. In this case, what I've done, let's look at the dependency relationship. So what you are seeing here is the dependency for this application that I have defined. Adobe Reader, as we told you before, is an AppV instance. It's not locally installed MSI, right? So this is a new thing in Configuration Manager 2012. What I did was, Configuration Manager, because it is contextual, because it will understand what's going on the client, it will go out and it will check for different requirement rules. One of the requirement rules that I have defined here, which is the dependency. Since this is the AppV version of Adobe Reader, I need to make sure that AppV client is installed on the machine. And if it is not installed, you don't have to create an extra step of first installing AppV client and then installing Adobe Reader. What this rule will do is first check, this is Adobe Reader 9, Microsoft AppV. What it will check is whether, as you can see here below, whether AppV desktop client is installed or not. If it is not installed, Configuration Manager will automatically install AppV client first, which is what it did, and then install Adobe Reader. So that's the dynamic nature of management that Configuration Manager now supports. That will help you consolidate your management for virtual environment, app V integration, as well as through your regular physical desktops. So let's go back and talk about asset inventory. So again, one of the biggest problems when we talk about consumerization is understanding what you have in your network, what you have in your organization. I mean, most of the people don't know how many devices are being used by your users. And obviously, devices like phones come and go. They are lost, they are bought new, and you just don't know what is happening in your network. So with Configuration Manager, you will be able to get asset inventory. You'll be able to get visibility into the software that is being used on that device. You'll be able to use hardware. You'll be able to see the hardware inventory for your Windows devices. Then you have virtualization-aware solution with Configuration Manager. As I said, it understands the context that this is a virtual machine, and it will create unique IDs for those virtual machines. So you will not have to have a separate list of inventory for virtualized instances. And then you have these other mobile devices, non-Windows devices. Configuration Manager, through Exchange Active Sync, can actually manage those other devices as well, get inventory of those devices, give you visibility in different reports of the devices that are being used. So in one console, in Configuration Manager console, you'll get a list of devices that are being used, and they are tied to your user. So now you have that correlation, right? You understand what are the devices that are being used and get unified asset inventory. The next part about talking about assets and talking about management is compliance. And I talked about how we should go from control and ownership to control and compliance. We want to make sure that the devices are compliant, and then you can provide access based on that compliance. In Configuration Manager, we have a feature called Settings Management. Earlier, it used to be called Desired Configuration Manager, and now we have Compliance Settings Management. So with that settings management, what you can do is define a baseline, define a compliance policy, monitor that compliance policy, so you get reports based on if there are any drifts in your network, if there are clients that are not compliant in your organization, and the same policy and the same compliance reporting can be done through Config Manager for virtual machines and virtual environment. And then you have Exchange Active Sync Connector, where you can define basic compliance policies. So for example, requiring a password to access the email, or requiring ability to remote wipe those devices. The key factor here is that you as desktop admins or desktop admins can get control over what is happening on the mobile devices. Now they, instead of going to Exchange folks and having a separate team getting reports and doing remote wipe and providing basic control policy for mobile devices, now you can do it in-house within Config Manager console itself. That's a pretty good tool that you have available to you that will unify your management for mobile devices. And of course, you have advanced group policy management that you can do much more granular settings and granular compliance policies as well. Then we talk about cloud management for Windows. I know most of you actually saw what is coming in Windows Intune. Windows Intune is the solution that provides you with management of your clients from the cloud. So you don't have to invest in any infrastructure on-premise, and you can manage all your clients from the cloud. Again, similar functionalities that you can get from Config Manager. You can also strategize to get from Windows Intune. You can manage your Windows devices. It is also virtualization aware. And Brad already pointed out the new things that were coming out with the pre-release that was made available today, right? What we are talking about is the Windows Intune version that is available in market today, not the pre-release one that you can test it out, but this is one that you can actually put it in production, and you can get inventory settings, you can get application distribution, and you get ability to upgrade to Windows 7 with the licensing of Windows Intune as well. Let's talk about, after we talked about management, the next chapter of our strategy is about modern security, modern access. What do we do there? Anti-malware. You know, if you have been following in the last couple of weeks, you must have realized that anti-malware protection is needed for all kinds of platforms. Right? It's not just limited to one kind of platform. Whether you're using iOS, whether you're using Android, whether you're using Windows, you do need to make sure that your platform is secure and protected.
So I'm going to interrupt AJ just for a second. There's a couple people leaving. I want to let you guys know that there's still a lot more demos left. We've got 18 minutes, but we do have a few more demos left, and they're going to be better, I promise. So keep around.
Sure. And so System Center Endpoint Protection is fully integrated with Configuration Manager. The advantage you get there is you have a consolidated platform for protection and for management. It's the same console. Within the same console, you're able to now manage your endpoint protection. You're able to define compliance policies, you're able to remediate, and you're also able to set security policies from there. And again, you know, our design principle of user centricity will help you here because now you can correlate user activity to malware attacks or malware threats. So you will understand user AJ, his machines, 3 different machines, they were detected with different kinds of malware, and so you can basically correlate that activity with malware. Windows Intune also comes with the same anti-malware capabilities, same anti-malware solution. It's part of the Windows Intune client itself, but it uses the same anti-malware engine that System Center Endpoint Protection uses. So we have done a ton of work and ton of improvement with our anti-malware engine. I'd be happy to talk to you at the booth, but I think this gives you a tremendous value for your existing System Center infrastructure, that now you can combine endpoint protection within your desktop management infrastructure. Then we talk about system integrity and device encryption. Obviously, BitLocker is the Microsoft offering for making sure that your device is encrypted. So where you have Windows devices, making sure that they're encrypted and the information kept on them is absolutely safe. And if you have MDOP, then you get this Microsoft BitLocker administration and monitoring that gives you a central place to monitor and manage your BitLocker deployment. So you can manage BitLocker keys, encryption keys, and those kind of things centrally through this, we lovingly call it MBAM solution. And then you still have Configuration Manager, where you have the capability of remote wiping a device or providing a compliance policy of device encryption there. David actually already talked about direct access, and I'll just briefly talk about access with Windows 7, which is direct access. You see the direct access gateway here. So regardless of whether your devices are within the network or outside the network. So right now what you see is they are inside, those devices are inside the intranet. They obviously have full access to everything. They have IPsec certificates that are kept on them. That will be used to validate their connection, validate their authenticity, and then given access. When they move outside, the advantage of direct access is that they're always connected. So regardless of whether they're inside or outside, as David showed you from a coffee shop, it didn't matter. The users don't have to do anything. They're outside through the internet using IPsec authentication, they will get access to internal devices. And based on user authentication and the policies, they will get appropriate access to internal resources. I'm going to quickly show you the integration that we have done on System Center Endpoint Protection and the policies that you can define on Configuration Manager for compliance settings. So I'll go to my Configuration Manager. Let's do it full screen. There you go. So I'm going to go to monitoring. This is your endpoint protection integration. So it's part of Configuration Manager console. You don't have to install any separate server for this. All you have to do is enable endpoint protection role, and you have this enabled, and you're able to define policies for that. You can define different policies for servers, for your desktops, laptops, what have you, within the same console, again, from these anti-malware policies section. And lastly, what I wanted to show you was configuration baselines. I talked about settings management, and I talked about how we are providing compliance tool in Configuration Manager. So with this, you can define different baselines in your network. With those baselines, you can deploy those to your users, to your devices, and basically you can now define auto remediation as well. So if there is any drift in the compliance of the machines, the corporate controlled machines, they can be made compliant automatically using Configuration Manager. All right, so I'm going to go back to my presentation here and talk a little bit about information protection. Again, extremely important factor for you when you're thinking about consumerization and providing access to your users using multiple devices. Obviously, that corporate data is critical, and you don't want that to be accessed from untrusted devices, from devices that are not in your control. So Active Directory Rights Management Services will provide you with that capability. Will provide you with the ability to define rules that the user cannot forward, for example, any email, cannot copy it, cannot print it. So you'll be able to encrypt and provide permissions to, let's say, a SharePoint or any Office application, and make sure that the corporate data and information is kept safe and secure using Active Directory Rights Management Services. So I'm going to ask David to quickly show you ADRMS in action, and he'll take it from there. Thanks, David.
All right, we have Alice, who's now on her client 3 machine again, and what she is going to do is actually, she's actually going to save some of these documents here to her drive. So first off, and this is really talking about user state virtualization. So, and you'll see how this plays into part in a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to save this cartoon to my documents. And what we have actually is on these my documents shares, there's offline files and folders and folder redirection. So effectively, when I go in here and I make changes, this is going to get saved whether I'm online or offline. So what I've actually done is I've created a Word document, and it's actually encrypted with ADRMS. And this is done very simply by going protect document, restrict permissions by people, and then restricting access to specific people. So you'll notice here you can specify any number of people. Now, there are lots of different ways you can ADRMS protect documents. You can do that via SharePoint. You can do that via file classification infrastructure, or with Windows Server 2012, it would be dynamic classification infrastructure. But you can also do it manually, right? The other thing that you can do is with emails, right? What I can do here is when I create a new email, and let's send this to Ben and to myself, and I just want to say, do not forward this important mail. So what I can do here is go to Options, Permissions, and then I'm just going to click the Do Not Forward button. Now, there's a lot of different options that you can do here. You could set up policies to say, I want to encrypt everything automatically with Exchange to certain, let's say, sales or finance. You can also automatically scan emails for sensitive information, like credit card numbers, all kinds of things, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and send this. And what we're going to do is actually go over to the iPad really quick and actually take a look at what that looks like opening up ADRMS protected emails on the iPad. There it is. Okay. Just took a second. So when I go here, when I go to my inbox, it looks like I got another email from Alice. And what you'll notice there is that it says do not forward this important mail. It's restricted permission. So whatever text or anything that I had on here, it's actually automatically protected, right? So effectively, what I could do here is click on this button, and it actually is going to decrypt that mail. Now this is with the support of a partner called GigaTrust. GigaTrust actually is the partner that enables the ADRMS protection on the iPad. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to AJ.
So we wanted to bring it together, and as I said before, that we talked about policies based on these different components and the policies you want to define. So we wanted to drill down a little bit on those policies, on what you want to decide to provide. And so I'll let David talk about those policies.
Yeah. So effectively what you have is at the left-hand side, you've got a trust level. All right, and this is kind of what we've been talking about earlier in the session, is also what Brad mentioned in his session. Really, effectively, the more trust that you have for a device, the appropriate level of access you should give for that kind of device. So what we have is a sample kind of policy that you might want to implement here, which drills a little deeper. All right? In this top bar, you see device, identity, policy applied, and policy compliant. So based on those factors, we're going to give a different level to each of these categories. So at the bottom level, we have an unknown device. This would be at your company, you plug something in, and you have no idea what it is. You have no credentials, you have no policies on it at all. The next step would be something like a username and password. This would be somebody bringing in that Android or bringing in that iPad and actually trying to put in a username and password. The next layer here, this would be things like your mobile devices. This would be things like your domain joined machines. This also could be things like Windows Intune joined machines. Maybe it's not joined to your domain, but you've got Windows Intune on it, so you have some visibility into the machine itself. And at the top layer, you've got the full experience. It could be a desktop virtualization machine. It could be a physical PC that's got BitLockers fully encrypted with direct access, and it's got full connectivity back to your corporate environment. So the question now is, what actually access do you give each of these? At the bottom, you should give no access to those people, right? And we do this. We didn't really talk much about it, but this could be done via technology called server and domain isolation, which is in Windows Server. Okay. If you go up here, we call this proxied policy or proxied support. And really what this would be like is for those devices that are there, what you have is remotely connecting to apps or remotely connecting to a desktop. So effectively on that device itself, it doesn't actually keep any real data, right? It's just connecting up to something remotely that has everything stored. Up here, right, we have things where you now are protecting the information itself via ADRMS, so that when you have those devices that are out there that have sensitive data on it, you're not worried if the device gets stolen. You actually have that information protected at its source. And then at top, you've got seamless access anywhere, and you have user-centric application delivery across all those different, that device itself. So this is just an idea. If you want more information on this, I recommend going to Eduardo Kastner's desktop strategy session, which dives a lot more into this policy stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close on a demo here with a bunch of different technologies to kind of pull things together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in and I'm going to remote wipe Ben's devices. So the scenario is this, right? Ben's got, let's say, an iPhone, an iPad, and a laptop, right? He goes to a hotel, and everything gets stolen. Either he gets ransacked or he leaves it in his room and it's gone, right? This is a very real scenario today. So what we're going to do is we're going to show how Configuration Manager will actually really help with this scenario. So what you can see here is Configuration Manager, and when we go in, the first thing we're going to do is say, oh, well, it looks like we need to wipe his devices, right? That's the first thing we're going to probably try and do with Exchange ActiveSync. All right, so I'm going to leave these up here, and we're going to have to try and switch over when it actually starts to wipe. But the first thing we're going to do is show devices, okay? And devices here, this is one of the nice things. So if we type bin and type search, you'll notice that the iPad and the iPhone come up, right? And the key thing to point out here is that it automatically appends the name in front of the device here. So if you just are using Exchange, it's not necessarily going to really do that, right? And you're going to be looking in different places to try and find these devices. Whereas here, we can search for phones, or all the devices that are connected via Exchange ActiveSync, just by these simple commands. And what we're going to do is we're going to go here, and we're going to actually go and actually initiate a wipe on these devices. So I'm going to click wipe. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I am sure. That's what we want to do. We want to wipe this thing out. So I'm going to wipe that. I'm going to also go in and wipe this iPhone. We're going to say yes. We're going to wipe that. When you go in here, you'll notice it also has a bunch of different information about that device itself. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and start to try and synchronize these guys. Oh, and it looks like, let me switch to my Wolf Vision real quick. So it looks like here, let me zoom out. Both of these devices are actually now formatting and reinstalling. So right there via the Configuration Manager console, we've actually remote wiped those devices, and they're going to be reinstalled back to their factory settings. Now, that's great for both of those iOS devices, okay, but what about the laptop, right? What do we do about that? Because the other thing here is right, I guess let me backtrack for 1 second. One of the reasons also why this is not an end-all, right? Because let's say that you're a malicious hacker kind of person, right? What do you think is the first thing you're going to do when you actually take that device? You're going to probably pull out the SIM card. You're going to probably try and disconnect it from wireless, because that remote wipe is only effective when it's done online, right? So that's why ADRMS is really important to have as a multi-tiered strategy for your approach. Now, EAS is great. It does a lot of good things. You can set pins and policies. You can enforce encryption and a lot of other good things, right? But there are ways on different devices to actually bypass, EAS. At least, yeah. So I'm not going to. You can look that up. But at any rate, okay, let me come back now to the scenario of the laptop. So what I'm going to do, remember earlier, we actually had been save some information to the laptop device. So what I'm going to do first of all, just so you know this is a real deal, is I'm going to actually just come up here. I'm going to type this here and just make a quick change and then delete this. So we make this change, we save it, and then I'm going to power this down as if this laptop was actually stolen, okay? So what I'm going to do is then shut this puppy down. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Lots of devices switching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually shut this guy down. I'm going to power it down. Actually, you know what? I'll just go ahead and do a hard power cycle on it right here. So let's just turn it off. That's like it's gone, right? And so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually connect up to Ben. Ben's got the scenario. His laptop's gone. How is he going to get his information back? So what we're going to do is go back to a new device that Ben actually bought, all right? So I'm going to go to, let's see. To a device here. Give it a second. Okay. So here's the scenario. So what I have here, okay, give it a second here. It was working. Yes. Oh, here we go. It just, some reason, logged me off. I don't know why. But what we have, right, is a device. And this is actually a Samsung Series 7 Slate. And the Samsung Series 7 Slate, one of the nice things about this is that it's got a TPM chip in it, right? And so we can do direct access. We can do BitLocker. We can actually do all of this and have full direct access connectivity. One of the other things I love about this is the fact that what you can do is have profiles. I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but in my experience in using the Android and the iOS devices, right? You know, I have my wife or my daughter on there. I'm getting Facebook messages and all these other things. You know, that's one of the nice, unique things about having a Windows device. And I know we're almost out of time here. In just 1 second, I'll actually show you this working. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, what I'm using right now is actually a technology called WiDi. So I can actually walk around with this, and this is actually streaming remotely the audio and video of this device. All right. So what I can do now is I'm actually connected to the public network, and you'll notice here ipconfig. Let's see, my keyboard's not here, and I'm out of time. Let's hit enter. There we go. So I'm on the coffee shop, right? This is Ben's device. He bought this, right? He went to the store, he bought this. This is not domain joined, it has nothing on it, right? So what did I do? One of the first things I can do is actually go to this remote access gateway. When I connect up here, I can actually remotely launch. I obviously have to put in my username and password, but what I can do is remotely actually launch applications, right? What I can also do is, because what's been set up here is a remote desktop session, if I click on that, what I can do is actually connect up to this. So while I'm waiting on this, let's see if we can get a fun little projection here. I don't know if it's going to work for me. Hello. How's it going, everybody? There you are. All right. So here we go. I got to actually put in my password. So I'm going to put in my password over here. I gotta do this typing thing. It's kind of Windows 8 has a better typing keyboard. This is just it's asking me for credentials because I haven't set the policy to allow safe credentials. So I'm just gonna hit PSS, my secret password. Okay. Let's log in there. While that's connecting up, here we are. Okay, here we go. Type in the password, which is already there. And now what you'll notice is I've got a desktop, right? This could be a session virtualization. It could be a personal VDI desktop or whatever. You've got a desktop, and this desktop is actually connected via Corp. You'll notice now I'm logged in. I've got Ben Smith. I've got the link. If I connect up here, I can actually connect to my SharePoint site. This actual instance is on the corporate network, right? And when I actually go to my documents, you notice here I don't actually have Excel installed, but what you will notice is that the timestamp here, right? So here you actually have 5:18 at 5:18 p.m. is when it was saved. So this is actually my saved document that I had from that laptop that was down. Right, so that kind of concludes things together. So you can see how you can use all of these different technologies to kind of play a part in helping out devise a strategy for your users in your environment.
That was a lot of technology and a lot of ground to cover for us. So ultimately, what we wanted to provide was end-to-end view of what you have available today and how you can start preparing so that once our new technologies that were shown today in the keynote come out, you have a head start. You are able to define and you are able to provide your users with applications securely and from any device that they want to use. That was the idea for today. If you have any questions, I know we are out of time, but happy to have any questions later on. Also, please visit us at the booth, and we'll be happy to provide more architecture type of discussions as well. Any questions that we can take before we say goodbye? Anyone? Going once, going twice.
We'll be up here if you got questions after.
Yep.
So.
All right. We appreciate you coming in, and please complete your evaluation. Thank you so much. Have a good night.